Okay, my friends, this is just too much. I'm not kidding you. This just came in from Greg Morrison. He's one of my top contributors of sending me things. Fabulous things. Now, what is this? It looks like my dog's bone. I just got this from it. It just came in. Now, oh, and it's heavy. Now, this, whatever it was, it could be a bone. At first I thought this must be an artery because it's just saturated with blood. But bones are full of marrow, which is basically the same thing. Now, this is the other end. We're going to look at this in a microscope, and we're going to do a little work with it. But to see, I want to see if this is bone, which I think it probably is now the more I look at it. It died like this, in this condition, laying that way, down. And the reason I can tell that is because this is where all the blood collected. You see the redness to it? That's how it would have died. Everything precipitates downward. And it's just saturated with blood. And then I also, I got this from him in the same package. And this is a membrane. Now, this has got something crazy. On the top, it's got like a fuzz. We're going to look at this in a microscope. And I could feel there's a different feel to this. We'll see it in the microscope. You'll see it different. This was cut with a saw. So it shouldn't, what this fuzz doing sticking out of here, and this different texture where these red spots are, which were, had something to do with blood. Anytime you see red, it's got something to do with blood. And these are membranes. And we're going to do the Catalase test on these things too and see if we can pull out some oxygen, which will show us that there's still active enzymes in there. And there will be, I'm almost 100% sure. I really almost can find nothing that the enzymes aren't still active, right? Which is very interesting because they never thought soft tissue could last. And we know now we've got scabs, blood running out of them. So they just never realized. They look at something like that, they say, well, that's some kind of, I don't even know what they would say it was. But they would come up with something. And, you know, you should see, wait, I got to show you this. You're not going to believe what I'm about to show you. I absolutely just was floored. Wait till you see this. Right, this is Myron Cook. And he's talking about geology, and he's looking at this formation. They call them the Flatiron Rocks. And it goes all the way down just like this. And he thinks that was made by a volcano. And up here, there's all the dragon bones. Those are the actual ribs of the dragon. Now, I'm just going to let it play for a second. These are blocks, block after block after block. This is biology, and these are little pores that were in that creature's body. And I have a bunch of stuff around here. I'll show you the exact same formations. But just look at the blocks. How would this, he's saying this was just piled up from runoff of water, a water channel. That's not realistic. Listen.
So you kind of know. And see those depressions in there? They're here and there everywhere. Nice little round depressions here, by the key, back off the edge. And if I walk along, we'll see some more.
These are the blocks.
A nice one here and
here. You see that? What he just pointed to right there. That is almost certainly a blood vessel. And that's actually the blood that was in there. If he would scrape that out, he could probably find, he's going to find something very similar to this down in there. These things were just gigantic, absolutely enormous. And there is no way I can account for it. But I can tell you what, all these blocks didn't just happen by themselves. And whenever you see these colors, they're feeding on some kind of biology. And that was a vein or an artery or a nerve or whatever. A lot of it turns to just a blank stone that has no food value. But if it's blood and so forth, absolutely. Creatures love blood. I don't know if there's anything else in there, but you know, I would like to discuss this with Myron, and he's just said, well, we're just so far apart that there's no sense to talk. But he's talking about all these formations being like footprints in this. Oh, here it is right here. Okay, here we go.
Years old in the desert of Wyoming.
He's saying this just all piled up from water running off. But when you see, when he starts walking down these bricks, they have a brick formation to them. And
I love to hike along the tops of these channels looking for clues to Earth's history.
See, watch your go.
This channel caught my eye because I think I see animal footprints in the sands here in the top of the channel. Let me show you what I'm looking at. I've put my...
No, I'll just stop it here because we did it before. But he's seeing these little dimply spots, but he's missing these little blocks. Nobody... This is not water erosion, which is what he's saying. Oh, it just piled up here by accident. No. These blocks are part of some formation of a creature's body. I agree there was... It looks like there was some heavy erosion here, yes. But that is the boiling off of the body tissue and leaving this, and then it maybe became a little disturbed, because it does look, you know, kind of bounced around a little bit. But you can see the blocks, and I'm going to show you why you see all these little dimply things and what this brownish looking clay in there. That's not just brownish clay. That relates to biology. All right, I know you've seen the dragon in the desert. And they had ribs because they were such long creatures, snaky bodies. They were like serpents. And these things are absolutely enormous. Here he is standing in front of one, look. He's standing in front of one of these things. He's digging it. It's bentonite clays. It's like bentonite and kaolin clays. Look at the size of these things.
Well-cemented sandstone. And here, it's soft. So I've jumped up over here on the other side of the valley, kind of the ridge, as you can see.
You see this? This would have been the body of the creature. They were just gigantic. Look at how long this thing goes for. These were his ribs that would run down like this. They've eroded down here and made a channel, yes. Because this is pretty soft, bentonite clay. And apparently they were real floppy, the bony portions, because they have to, serpents are very, very fluidy. So I would assume that, and because this stuff does bend easily for kaolin, well, you saw him dig it right, and these kind of things are in the skin and in that area, bentonite and kaolinites and all of that stuff. But this is his body, and this is the ribs. As far as I'm concerned, how could anybody think that was made by a volcano? It's incredible, really. And I asked Myron to discuss it, and he said, no, we're just too far apart. Well, we are far apart, but you still got to discuss something. Look at that thing. Look at that. Look at that. Who could come up with it that was made by a volcano? I mean, seriously. It doesn't get any more incredible than this. I'm not kidding you. This just came in from Greg. I'm blown away. That could be my dog's bone. I'm pretty sure that's bone. Because I have another one over here that's from the finger of, well, hold on. Let me just get it. All right, this is from a fingertip that I have here. All right, now this is the bone ball, and this, you see the look of it? You see the look of it? That's the bone ball. And what's cool about this one is on the other side, it didn't erode away all the way down to the bone. It only eroded to where you could see the muscle. You see that? That's the muscle. It wraps around the bone. Here's the bone, and here's the muscle on the other side. And then the muscle gives way to the tendon, which comes down. That's the stalk of the tendon. That comes down to one of your fingers. It's one that runs down the side of one of your fingers. And then it goes down the tendon out towards the tip of the finger. That's the end towards the fingertip, the fingernail, and that's your muscle. It wraps around the bone ball. I show them this with the anatomical stuff. I get pretty deep into the anatomy. I enjoy doing this. And I'm telling you, look at that. Isn't that just phenomenal? It's just freaking phenomenal. I was just absolutely off the wall laughing. Look at that. Could be identical. It looks like it's identical. Only this one has more blood. Nero. This is my dog Nero. He ate it all out. But that would have had more blood in there, just like that. That's the marrow. It's just you know, every day is like Christmas for me. And he sent me this other one here. We're going to look at this in a minute in a microscope. We're going to look at all this stuff in a microscope. But because I want to absolutely be certain that this is not a blood vessel, which I at this point I'm thinking it's a bone. So let's look. All right, this goes way beyond insane. Like I showed you, I think this is a bone. That's a bone. Look at this. You see that right there? Something was attached to that bone right there, just like something was attached to this bone right here. That's why Nero, my dog, is chewing at that spot. There's ridges where something, your tendons invest. That's why that's a different color. These are tendinous spots. And this whole line here must have been a real good one because he's really been chewing at that. You see all those little fibers? Those are the little fibers that go to the tiny times a million balls that are stuck in here that hold whatever that anchored to. Tendons have a bazillion balls in them. So this is that right there. As far as I'm concerned, this is a dead ringer. I'm going to go with bone on this. Originally I thought it was a blood vessel, but I'm going with bone. And this here, hold on. Oh man, that thing is heavy. So made out of iron. Blood. Now, this is this spot right here. And that's the tendon. It runs right down. The little ball in the tendon. It runs this way. It's backwards. In other words, it runs down this way. But I can show it better facing this direction. And again, this is the tendon. That's the muscle. It wraps around the bone ball, which is the bone ball is right under here. There's the muscle. Weaves right around here, so you can do this. And this is the tendon that hooks to a muscle, so you can go like back and forth that way. And this side just eroded all the way down to the bone ball. I mean, how cool is that? It's like an autopsy right out of the ground. All right, this goes beyond belief. This is a membrane, and I'll show you this quite closely. And then we're going to do a catalase test on the red spots, because that should be where the enzymes will be, if there's any left. Now, wait till you see this. You see the top here? It was cut in such a manner that it cut right at the point where all the tiniest tendon balls invest. And when I say tiny, wait till you see this. This is going to freak you out. Don't forget, this is the microscope. We're looking right at this little spot right here. And in there you're going to see all the little fibers that run to all the little balls. And this, I mean, it's literally stunning. Where do you see this? Look up here. That's what's coming out of the top of that rock. Now watch this. You say, oh, they're just stuck there. No, they're not. They're stuck down to the balls that are underneath. Now watch this. I'm moving those fibers around. They're not going to go anywhere. They're stuck there to the balls that are underneath. They're not going to fall off of there. I thought I scrub them off. All of these, there's tiny little balls in there, and every fiber goes to a ball. Let me show you what it looks like in actual human tissue. This is stunning, absolutely stunning. All right, these are the fibers. They're growing out of this rock, and each one of those is attached to a little tiny ball. And this is not a good enough microscope to see the balls, but I'll show you what they look like in that anatomical shot. And hold on one second, let me get set up here. All right, you see that? That's nothing more than the tissue that is your skin or a coating of an organ or whatnot, and then you get down through these layers of membranes. And guess what? That is exactly what you see here. The outside was the skin area. Well, it was actually a little lower because it was cut flat off of here. So I'm not sure where he started, but here I believe is right there. All right, somewhere right in that area, because above that you got just some like fleshy stuff, it appears to me. And then you have all those tendon balls, which are going to be right at basically at the surface of your skin. You see that? There's going to be a ton of them in here. And there's a ton of them in here, and I'm going to show you that in a second. And then below that you get, whoops, where am I? Where'd I go? Here I am. Below that, you get into your membrane layers, and there's a ton of membranes. There's not just one or two or five or 1,000. There's a bazillion of them. Now, the bone, as I showed you before, I believe that is a bone now. That's originally, like I said, I thought it was a blood vessel, but it's just too. It just seems to be a bone now. And again, I want to look at it, and I could tell something invested in there. Whether, I mean, that could be an artery, or I don't know, or it could be a bone. Like I say, it looks just like my dog's bone. Now, at the end would be something like this. Of course, you know, obviously the size of this. But this is what happens. They change inside. Now, this one is still very, very, very red blood. I mean, very red blood. Look at that. You see that? Doesn't get much redder than that. And we're going to do the Catalase test, and you can see the border of the bone and so forth there, which I believe is the bone, and I believe this is where there was some kind of an attachment here. And this looks like another form of an attachment, whatnot, because bones have attachments in a lot of different places. It depends on how they're being pulled and what bone it is and what direction it's being pulled in. It looks like there's another investment there, something attached there. And again, this would have been down because all the blood ran down. That's how you can tell the downside is where the blood would run. Now, this shows you some different changes in the nucleophilic substitution. So it actually, I think it would be like this direction here, where the red blood stayed at the top and this started to transition because it was the downside. Yeah, right here would have been the very downside. Yeah, which it corresponds to that color blood. Anyway, that's my take on it. Now, this is really interesting. Really interesting. Now, when I say those little fibers are everywhere through there, and they are just saturated with them, you want to see what it looks like? Here's what it looks like actually in the picture of very close up. All right, this is a shot of this particular area in something like this. The skin basically is on the outside. This is the fluid-filled highway, and then you get into the interstitium. Now this is closer. See, this bullet is the same spot here as here, but we can see the balls. All those balls, every one of those has a strap, and here they are when they're strapped up. They're all running through this like that, and that's what's coming out of here, all those hairs. Every one of those has a hair attached to it. Can you imagine? Now I showed you all those little stringy things coming up, and I could feel them. Where these brown patches are, that's where they still have the tendon balls attached. Now, a little bit of water usually makes things stand out a lot better. You see those brown spots? Those are the areas where all the strings are coming up through. And then if you follow it down from there down, which this is, wherever this was, I don't know where it was in the body, but on the end we can see we have all of these layers. Look at all those layers. And you can't even come close to seeing how many layers there is just by, you say, oh, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of them here. No, there's probably 100 there. Another, I mean, there's just unbelievable number of layers. You can't see them because they're just so tiny. And the bigger the creature, the easier it is to see them. Now, this had to be a fairly good-sized creature, but it's nothing like what, you know, Tyson and I have been working with. Tyson has a spot out there on the West Coast. It's just stunning. Huge, 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 huge creature. Now, we're going to be looking at some of these, because I can actually see, I think, blood vessels and so forth in here. Everything has to be fed with blood. That's what this brown stuff is. That's ferrous oxide, blood. And it's in some kind of a membrane, which is basically like what you're seeing over there. Whoops, can you see that? No, you cannot. It's like what you're seeing over there in the membrane. Mm-hmm. It's basically the same thing. Only this you can really see it. These, they stain them and so forth, and you can see sort of areas, but you can't really see what you can see when you have what I have here. Like I said, Greg Morrison's the guy that sent me this stuff. He's absolutely fabulous. And I suppose we should do a little microscoping on that just to take a quick look. And of course we don't want to look at that too. And then we want to do the Catalase test. And I can almost guarantee you, well, let's see what, I can't guarantee you of anything. All I can do is see what we see. All right, is that a fair enough description of what's going to occur? Yes, it is. Thank you. I'm glad you agree. And we will see what we see when we see what we see. Do you agree? Very, 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 very interesting how all this could be just dismissed for this amount of time. Not a good situation. All right, here it is. Isn't that great? It's so phenomenal. Anyway, alright, I showed you the things from Myron Cook there, and he's talking about these little dimples being footprints and so forth. This was from a CAT scan we had done from Jesse Garant and Associates. Absolutely stunning work. And this shows where the fingernail was originally. You can never see any of this stuff. And let me show you a couple other ones. Hold on. Alright, this is this fingertip. Alright, this is the whole fingertip. And then, of course, oh, that's the bottom of the fingertip. And up here there's an apical tuft, which I'll show you. I have others that are eroded all the way down to the apical tuft. This is where the tendons invest on the side. And I have other ones that show the exact same architecture. No difference whatsoever. Now, this is a thumb, and the way I can prove that's a thumb is that the bone is on the side. Now, I broke this piece off, because you could break it off and find the bone. This is the bone. They want to break all this other stuff off and get down to the bone. It's just a smidge difference in chemistry, and it will break right on that line. All right, so anyway, this is the bone, and the reason I know it's the thumb, and the reason I know it's the right hand thumb, is because the bone is offset, and this extra is just hanging off the side. If you, whoops, I don't want that falling into my screen. Hold on a second. Oh! All right, here we go. If you take your thumb and you go like that, right on the edge here is the bone, and then over here you just got excess. You see it? You see the excess? You got the same thing. If you got a thumb, just feel it. You can feel there's a bump over here, but the bone is way to the side right here. And that's what this is a right-hand thumb. All of the other ones are right dead center in the center, and my other ones are dead center. This one just happens to be a thumb. And when I talked about the apical tuft, in the very tips, and you can actually see the round, it's at the top and the bottom. You see that round spot right there and all these little legs sticking out of it? That's this right here. All right, which is the apical tuft. And that tuft is at the end of your fingertip, and all these balls with straps run down so that you can really, really do all kinds of gripping and all kinds of things with your fingertip. Let me show you the anatomical. You see that? That's the ball at the bottom, right there. Right at the very tip of your bone. And all of these little tendons, fibers, invest into that, into these sockets, these holes. They're all over the place. And that is what gives you all that strength on your fingertips. You see, this is the apical tuft right there. It sits right at the end of your fingertips. And there it is right there. Like I say, I have things that are so completely eroded, and then I have other ones that aren't eroded at all. And it's right from the same hand. It all came out of the same hole. So I'm assuming it's all from the same hand. So don't forget, this shows you, I believe that is the vein, because it's black. And this is the artery, because it's cleared out, basically. Arteries just flow out. And this hand, this fingertip was up, I'm almost certain, because it's not, the veins and arteries aren't blown out. You can't even tell which side is which, really. Other ones, like this one here, completely eroded. And the reason it did is because it was way, way, way down. This was way, way, way up. So all the blood ran down through here, in through, well, the vein comes back and they clamp off. You see, that's a vein right there. And that's a vein. They don't blow out because they have clamps, but they're veins right there. And there's one at the end right there. They don't blow out. Guess what? You see that? That's an artery. That's an artery. That's an artery. And that's the artery that fed it. They just blow right out because there's no restrictions to them. The veins have valves, so it goes out that way, can't come back. So they're stuck in here in little clumps. And this side would have done exactly the same as this side, except it's the black blood and it just hardens up. This is going to form hematite. Hematite in the end. See that red there? I don't know if you can see that. You see that red? Well, I guess it would probably do this in a microscope, but this is a fingertip. It just eroded so bad. You can barely see the bone. This is where the bone would go, right around here like this. And that right there, that black, if you can see that black shadow there, that's what's called bone black. And that's what's called distal phalanges pattern. If I put a little taste of water on it for a second or two, you should be able to see it. You see the black right there? See that black pattern? That's a distal phalanges. And that's what this is, a distal phalanges. It's a fingertip. And this right here is where the bone pattern is around. All the flesh is gone. And these right here are the veins. That one right there was a vein. This one right here was a vein. This is that angle that I talk about, the same as on this one. I'll show you in a second. And this is where the blood blows out, and that is as red blood as you can get. And that's because this was down, and it eroded on the downside, and everything ran out. This was up, and it just stayed perfect. Same hand, just a little bit of a different condition, that's all. Now oh man, my shoulder's bothering me today. That is that angle. You see it? It's the same kind of angle we have here. Of course, this one's very, very eroded, and this one is not quite so eroded, but it's a fingertip from the same hand. I'm absolutely 100% certain of it. Like I say, it came out of the same hole with the same, well, left hand. So I'm going with it's the same fingertip, but only from a different hand, but of the same hand. That's how different it can be. And not even that. Where do you see this? Not only can it be different one finger to another, it can be different on the same bone ball. I think I've probably showed you this, but I like showing it because it's so cool. Okay, what I am showing you here is the tendons that run across your fingertip, across the top of your fingers, like right here, exactly right here. And underneath is a ball, a bone ball, and this runs right over the top of it. Now, coming off the side is a tendon. This little circular spot there, I think you can see that. You see that circular spot? That is literally the tendon coming down. And they always have an abrupt transition. They just break like that. This is the weave of the muscle that wraps the bone ball. And then what happens to the tendon, there's always a muscle attached. The muscle is right here. So the tendon comes to here, there's an abrupt transition, snaps right off here, the muscle just goes away. And they all have an abrupt transition. Now, again, this is the muscle that wraps around the bone ball. I have the anatomical, I will show you right in a second. And here's the bone ball. Here's the other side of the bone ball. You see it? It's right here. So that's the side that has everything still attached to it. And this is the side that's everything's eroded away, and we can see the actual tendon fibers. And I mean there's a million of them. You see that? When I show you in a microscope, it blows your mind. It's just unbelievable. And this is from that same hand, from that same finger, from all the same stuff that I have, from that one creature, I'm almost 100% sure. Now, what does it look like anatomically? Well, here it is right there. It's the exact same thing. There's that piece that I showed you, and the snap and the little round spot there, and I had the feather going up to it like that, snaps off right there, abrupt transition. This is that muscle that weaves around the bone ball. The bone ball is right here. And then this is flat, and this, what this happened with this one, it was upside down like this and laying flat. So this just flattened out like a pancake. You can still see you see how many layers of tendons there is running up there? You can still see the layering in there, especially when it gets wet. All right, but what we have here is that little thing coming down with the, hold on, can I see them both at the same time? Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, this is the piece right here coming down and it broke off. That's it right there. That's the core of it. They all have a core. This is the muscle fibers. There's the muscle fibers. This is the bone ball. That's the bone ball, which you can't see the bone ball, but it's under there. And this is all of the tendons over the top. These are the tendons. Now, when it's wet, you can see some separation layers here that indicate there was, well, you might be able to see them now. When they're wet, anything when it's wet, you can see it better. But you can see, well, let me just put real quick so you see it. These are the layers of tendon that are those layers of tendon. You see? And it died laying like this. And everything eroded away except for that portion of the bone ball, and all these tendon fibers in here, which there's a bazillion of them. And this side shows everything is here. This is about as cool as it gets. For one thing to be showing all that detail from erosion to completeness. Very, very unique specimen. And I just took it out of the ground like that. I don't do anything to these things. I just wash them up a little bit maybe, but that's about it. Other than that, and I didn't dig for them. Well, a little bit. I had a little excavation done here. They dug for a little foundation, but not deep. It wasn't a full foundation. It wasn't like 8 feet deep or anything. It was only, I think, maybe 4 feet deep, something like that. Just, no basement floor or basement under it. Just enough to crawl space, I guess you'd call it. Anyway, and these things were all in it, including a hand. That gigantic hand. And all DNA tested and CAT scanned, and there's the hand. And that's all the bumper pad that goes around your hand, goes off to your little finger. That's the cleave right in there. All right, your little finger runs off this way. The thumb goes off there, which I had the thumb. I showed you it was a thumb. This is a tendon that runs right down, which you will have. Splay your hand back like that. You have one too. And all this silver stuff is the grip skin that comes off. It just peels off because it's almost like Velcroed on there. That's the stuff that, you know, you use up all the time. It's always getting scrubbed off. Friction skin, grip skin, whatever you want to call it. It's the outside layer on your hands, your feet, fingertips, all that stuff. I can't believe this. Oh man, this is so over the top. This is that layer with all the little balls and the fibers sticking out the top of the block that Greg sent me. These are all those little balls. And this is that layer of interstitium. That should give us a catalase reaction if it works. Let me show you what we're looking at right there. Remember that red layer. To me, that is our layer of the white blood cells and the interstitium. Let me see if I can focus in a little better. I guess that was about it. All right, can you see those little black balls in there all over the place? Those are the balls that attach those little strings. This is over the top. And here it is right here. That's what we're looking at. Where is it? Oh, there it is. That's what we're looking at right there. Alright, so we're really up close to the surface. And then all those little white strings come up above that. Okay, this is just blowing my mind. I just got this in from Greg. You see, this guy is fabulous. Now look at what we're looking at here. These are those black balls. Up here is that white fiber stuff. Now I'm going to try to manhandle this thing around. You see the fibers right there? Those fibers are coming down to those black balls and that's what makes your skin come back so you can move around and it comes back to basically where it was anchored from before. Now there's a layer of interstitium in here, and every membrane should have catalase. Catalase is a antioxidant. It's invasive oxygen species. It keeps them out. Reactive oxygen species, invasive oxidative species, it won't allow them in. So it kills them. That's what catalase does. But these balls are why these fibers go out. And it is so many fibers. This is just over the top. Alright, check this out. This is those fibers. They're coming down through this rock, attached to these black balls down underneath. Now I'm going to put some catalate or some hydrogen peroxide in here, and we should see some reaction. Don't forget, these are those little balls. They're everywhere, and it's exactly what they are in the biology. You see it right there? This is exactly what it is that all of those little tiny balls, exactly the same thing with little fibers attached to them, because they're just not floating all by themselves. They're attached to fibers, as I showed you. I am certain I did, and I will again right here, because these balls, they look like they're just floating there by themselves. They're not. They're attached to these little black fibers that are all over, and these other white things are fluid-filled sacs. This was just discovered, interstitium. I think I showed you that. All right, here we go. All right, I'm going to be honest with you. This is a first for me. A membrane that doesn't react to the hydrogen peroxide. I have not seen one single bubble anywhere. None. Zero. Zero. Every time I've ever seen a membrane, I've seen a reaction, and this one there is none. That to me is interesting on two levels. One, it shows that not everything reacts. It has to have viable chemistry. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a membrane. Of that, there's, in my mind, absolutely zero question. And all of those tendon fibers are showing up. Let me show you what fibrils look like in their giant state on Earth. And don't forget, this is what they look like in the tiny stage here. And every one of them has a fiber coming to it. Okay, I got Caesar in the microscope. We're going to be looking at his artery. And he consented to this. He's dedicated himself to science. Thank you, Caesar. Thank you. You will be remembered for this, my friend. Now, what are we going to look for? Does Caesar have catalase? Because all animals, all creatures have catalase to protect themselves from these extra oxygens. That's my interpretation. Now, what are we looking at? We are looking at that right there. That's Caesar's neck. And what we're seeing is Caesar's artery, which I've scratched off. This is all scratches because I get down there and scratch it out and look at it in the microscope and stuff like that. But what I'm going to do now is just put some hydrogen peroxide in there, and it should foam right up. Now, it may not. Well, it should. Let's see what happens. Caesar, are you ready, my friend? He said, yep, go ahead. Do what you got to do. All right, buddy, here goes. That should be enough. Now, I showed you what it looks like. Let's come right down on top of it. Now, I can only get so close because of the way it's broken off. Now, what do you see there? See all that bubbling? That's all oxygen. Let me get a better shot. You got to get really up close because these are just tiny, tiny bubbles. Hold on. Still bubbling off a little over here. I got to put some more on here. It ate it up so quick. Hold on a second. I got to pour some more hydrogen peroxide. Science takes time, my friends. Okay, now what can we do now? Can we see anything better? Let's put some hydrogen peroxide on that spot and basically inundate it and see what we can see. Look at the bubbling coming out of it. It was so aggressive to the hydrogen peroxide that by the time I got the microscope on it, it ate it all up. You see all that bubbling? That's what we should have seen on the other one there. See, it's already eaten it up and turned it into water. Some of it's still bubbling here and there. There it goes. There's a good spot right here. That's what you want to see for a catalase reaction. That's exactly it right there. It's breaking off the oxygens. Right there. All right, that was time consuming. Well, I'm going to go with almost certainly that it is bone. And it had a membrane on here, and all of the little tiny interstitium balls are in membranes, and they're just everywhere. And now they have turned to little quartz, because it's been invaded by whatever the chemistry is. And you can see it's highly granular. You see that? Those are the interstitium balls. Literally, I'm not kidding you. I'll show you. You see that? We're down on top of that particular spot on what I believe is a bone. And these are the actual interstitium balls that now have turned to little stony crystals, actually. This is about the best I can get. Like I said, I really need a better microscope. But all of these are those stony little balls. And all of this red stuff is the interstitium, gooey, floppy stuff in between that hasn't completely eroded away. These don't erode. The balls, they don't go bad. And they are in this quantity in places like the Moki marbles. You know, I'm just going to roam around here a little bit and show you. All of those are these little balls. Every one of those was one of those little balls. And all of that gooey stuff is the floppy stuff that surrounds them, and they all had little fibers at them at one time. Now that other thing that Greg sent me crystallized in a whole different manner, and the fibers didn't dissolve. It's very bizarre. I have never seen that before. But I believe I showed it to you where we could see the side and see in the blackness all the balls were there, and then coming out the top it was all fuzzy. And I've never ever seen anything like that. Greg is the guy, I'm telling you. Greg, you're amazing, buddy. Alright, this is my CAT scan DNA tested human lung. And we are looking at the fascia that surrounds it. It's called the pleura. And these are all the little fibers and the colored fabrics and so forth. Now I'm going to come right down on here. You won't be able to see much more, but these are the straps and balls that run all over this. And the pleura is a little different than fascia. It's a little more strappy because this lung has to inflate and deflate I don't know how many thousands of times a day. So it has to be a very, very tough fabric. And this is about as tough as it gets. Now you see this? I'm right down on top of it. All of this stuff here is a gummy, gooey, fabricy, stretchy connective tissue. And connective tissue just means that it can pull and stretch. And it's gooey as it can be. You see that? It just slurps all over. Now, let me show you where the blood comes from. Down here is, in this area, somewhere down here, I drilled a little pinhole in here. But this is just literally raw blood. It was down in here somewhere. This is a long, long time. A very small, tiny hole. But you can see, watch this. You want to see how easy it is to get blood out of here? Hold on, let me focus in on this. Alright, let's just look at this one spot. This red blood running out of there. Look at that. That's how quickly it hydrates. And you want to see how fluidy it is? Hold on, I gotta find my... Oh, nothing is where it should be when I want to have it where it should be, because it isn't there. Oh, here it is. This will work. Now, watch this. I just put a little water on her. And it hydrated it right in, like almost instantaneously. Now watch, I'm just going to scratch right around in here with a probe. Hold on, let me scrape it up a little bit. And you'll see how quickly it turns into mud. This is literally mud now. If you can't see how bloody that is, I don't know what to say. And I have some here on my probe. This is hard to do and focus it in, but you see what's on the probe right there? See how it scrapes right up? Just it's all scraped up like that. That's all you need to test this. I mean, that's way more than you need. But, you know, you have to do it. Obviously, you have to clean everything off. You have to make sure that you're wearing gloves and you're not contaminating everything. But when you send it in like this, it's, you know, and no negative controls comes back. He said it was dense. It was excellent quality, and I mean, you can see for yourself. If you can't see that, I don't know what to say. And then, oh, I could have told her, that's just iron oxide. Well, what do you think blood is? Red blood is the iron oxide that has 3 oxygens. Used blood only has 2 oxygens because you use one. And one turns black and one turns red. Alright, what you're looking at there is one of the little bones I have, but all the fabric is very, very, very similar. On the bone, the fabric is not so dense as it is in like that lung right there. That is like extremely rubbery, and it has to be because, again, your lungs have to do this, you know, a bazillion times all day long. Now, what we were looking at up here is this bone, which is that little bone I showed you before. And I think probably the scab came out of this one. When I show that scab, hold on, let me turn the lights on, hold on. I think I have a scab here, hold on. Yeah, I think that might have come out of this one of these holes here somewhere. But they all have them. And they all have veins and arteries coming in and out of holes and little depressions in them. And this is a bone. That's a Z bone. Alright, so you saw a Z bone which has a membrane around it, which still has to be rubbery and stretchy and gooey and all that. The same like your lung, only the lung is on steroids compared to this. It's like a fabric, you know, really heavy-duty rubber bag. Now, what else would be a heavy-duty rubber bag? Would be an animal's hide, like a cowhide. All right, this is cowhide, and it is genuine. Can you see that? Hold on. No fakes here. See that? Oops. Genuine leather. I think you can see that. Now, you see all this like fluffy stuff here? That relates to those fibers. You can say, oh, come on, Roger, they can't have that many fibers. Yes, they can. Remember that fuzz I showed you coming out of that other thing? Let me show you where those fibers are and how they relate to these balls. I'm going to put this in the microscope, and this will blow your mind. All right, we're going to be looking at how these fibers relate to the balls in a hide. Genuine leather. All right, there is my genuine cowhide leather tanned belt. And here it is in a Z microscope. And those are Z balls that's attached to Z straps. And that is tanned. What they do is they take the hide from the animal and then they put it in some kind of chemistry and so forth. And then they roll it flat and crush it and do all these kind of things. And I don't know after that. That's called tanning. And they end up with a fabric that's flexible and tough as hell. Leather is just tough as hell. And here's what happens where it gets next to the belt loop, and you can see the fibers separated from the balls. All right, see, here they are. This is a tanned, genuine cowhide belt. And there is where the straps become quite manifest. You see, every one of these attaches to one of those balls. But at that, where that belt loop goes through there, you know, you stretch it here and there, and you end up with these straps being quite exposed. So this is what was sticking out of that rock. It's beyond belief, but it's true. Okay, my friends, this is so far over the top, there is no top. Just when I thought I couldn't possibly be freaked out any more than I am, this pops up. I've been saying that aluminum silicates, which are feldspars, are the coating that surrounds all of the flesh and kept it from rotting. All right, what is flesh made out of? Clay. Listen to this. This is just unbelievable. Surface treatment, the outside treatment and bonding of ceramics, which is clay. The outside sealing of it is done with aluminum silicates. This is just unbelievable. They use mullite, which is an aluminum silicate. Where do you see which is this? Is 3Al, 2SiO2, which are the two primary components in feldspar. And it coats, and it did it at commonly formed at a high temperature under low pressure, which would be this flood, the hot water flood, low pressure, bonding the outside of clay, which is to make these things into mud fossils. And here it is right there, SiO2, Al2O3. That's exactly what we were just looking at. Those are the two top oxides in feldspar. These are all feldspars. That's just over the top. SiO2, Al2O3. 3La2O3, 2SiO2. This is feldspar. And they use it to treat the outside of pottery so that it's sealed. And pottery is made out of clay. I'm over the top. I'm just blown out. All right, what Myron Cook there is seeing is the skeleton of a giant snake or reptile of some sort, and these ribs have to be very flexible. Now, I don't know if this is faked or not. I looked at this. I've never shown it because I don't know if it's real or not. But a snake skeleton is like that, so let's just go past that. However, I did look at this pretty carefully, and all of the shadows and everything seem to line up with what you would expect. The bushes, the house, the skeleton, everything has the correct orientation to it. Whether or not it is real, I don't know. It's pretty good size. That is very good size. Now, outside of that, I don't know. I would expect to see a difference, like it's like rippling over. It might be going over the top of it and it's submerged a little bit, but I can see the waves coming, and I would think it would be changing the pattern. This could just be totally fake. I have no idea. That's why I'd probably use it for a thumbnail, maybe. It's going to get a lot of attention, but again, I have no clue if it's real or not. You know, I'm just going to make a point now, because this is just a fact. There was an age of sea monsters. They had pictures of them all over the world, everywhere, in books, and tales of them eating the ships, and there's all kinds of stuff. And they were gigantic snakes and things like that, were just crazy-looking creatures. Guess what they were? I can tell you what they were. They were the parasites and the ticks and so forth that were living on these giant dragons and creatures like that. They're living in their digestive systems. And then they left through the open wounds and so forth into the oceans, and they had to go find something to eat. And it happened to be sailors. And they were what we would call extremophiles. And I've shown this many times. They're just crazy looking things, but they look just almost identical to what they show in these ancient drawings. So that could very well be. There's no reason to say that there's none of these are anywhere left. You know, there's still sightings, and they go, oh, that guy's crazy, the guy's insane. I have no idea if that's true or not. I would suspect this is probably fake, but I don't know. I do not know. All right, I showed you that cowhide belt I have. Well, these are the tendons that come down, all the way down to these little tiny fibrils, and then there's a little anchor ball, and the fibrils are what we were seeing attached to those anchor balls. Now think of this. This is the tendon. It comes down, and in this one tendon, this block comes out. In that one block, this comes out. And in that one thing, there's a bazillion of these. So there's a bazillion of these in this. There's 3 of these in the major tendon. But then it starts to break down into tons of them. So you have this one, and you have a whole batch more. Then you have this one, and you have a whole batch more. Then you have this one and a whole batch more, and again, until you get down to the tiniest fibers. And that's what I showed you in that block that I got from Greg, where the tiny fibers right here going down to attach to just a bazillion balls. Now, if you'd have cut it, and some of them were sticking up, this is what I was feeling, this fuzz. And I said, what the hell is this? So when he cut it, the tendons were so tough that they didn't cut. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them didn't cut. They just sort of laid over sideways, because these are absolutely unbelievably strong. So when he cut it, everything else cut except the tendon fibers, not completely. Most of them, yes, but when I saw it, I said, what the hell is this? I couldn't scrape it off of there. I couldn't, and then I realized it was growing out of there, and then I realized it was attached to those black balls. All right, this just goes beyond coolness to extreme coolness. Those are the fibers. Every one of those attaches to a tiny little ball. Now I'm going to try to move this around, see if I can. This is as close as I can get. This microscope really does not go deep enough to see, but you see how the stuff changes, because where the cut was, there's certain areas that the balls are right next to these fibers, and then other areas where they're not anywhere near it. Let me see if I can find some of these. It's just not powerful enough to really see them well. But I will show you what, well, here's a spot right there. Well, you can see them. They're in there. And that's what's attached to these little fibers. Those fibers aren't there for nothing. And they are going into that rock. Of that, there is no doubt.